But also, remind me, didn't harassment architecture have like a glut of illustrated pages?
It had some, yes. Curiously, in the middle of the book.
Word for word, bar for bar. I think MMDNR has like a legal claim. He is in the States.
Yeah, I mean, you could just commit violence. That's a viable option.
Yeah, that's much cooler, yes. If I had to choose, and we do not condone or promote violence on this podcast, but you should definitely, hypothetically, split Mike Moss skull open.
Welcome back to the Unreal Podcast, the internet's first, and in my somewhat booze-addled opinion, foremost podcast on internet culture, transgressive fiction, and everything from 4chan that's actually good. We've got a blast from the past today. That's right. We're doing Behead All Satans today. And as always, I am your host, LAbuschagne, sorority sister of extreme ill repute, content producer, SEO manipulator, and profound drinker of rum and coke, which I am drinking from a glass that has the words Poes se glas engraved in it. For those of you lucky enough not to speak Afrikaans, Poes se glas means the glass owned by the cunt, which will tell you a lot more about my workplace. And as always, rum and coke out of a glass with an expletive carved into it pairs well with a lot of things, all of which are regrettable. And chief among those regrets is my co-host. As always, dude, welcome.
Howdy. Yeah, this is for the audience. This is a fucking re-recording of an episode we did like 3 weeks ago, but I had COVID and the episode kind of blew. So now we're re-recording the Behead All Satans episode. And this time I've got some green tea and creatine coursing through my fucking veins, feeling nice and limber. So my experience, like Behead All Satans needs a bit of an introduction. Because my experience with Behead All Satans prior to reading it was browsing the board, 2016, 2015, and seeing the occasional picture, a photo of a lemur and some vaguely schizophrenic caption. And I always ignored it because I didn't even know Behead All Satans was like a book. I thought it was maybe a meme, maybe like a fake book someone made as a joke. And the threads never got any traction, so I kind of assumed the book, if it did exist, kind of sucked. So I was very surprised to read Behead All Satans and get like the best book to come out of 4chan, unironically. The highest quality book to come out of this board.
Counting mine. I mean, back in 2015, hell, I wasn't even on Lit, which is the board this was posted on. I mean, I was still on B at that point, which... don't spend your teenage years on B. I mean, Paul exists, after all. Yeah, I had also sort of slept on this book, largely because I didn't know it existed, and also because it had a lemur on the front cover, and I'm not convinced about lemurs. I mean, I saw Madagascar, the movie with the penguins, and Chris Rock, and it was an okay movie, and I saw these little guys, and immediately I just switched sides. I thought, okay, these fuckers are the protagonists, like these cat-monkey abominations, fuck off. These things are an abomination. But the book, on the other hand, it's not very abominable. It's, in fact, as Rhyme said, good. It's even better than mine, which is my completely objective benchmark for telling if something's good or not.
I wonder what you were expecting of this book prior to reading it. Because I expected, I guess, maybe a short schizoid rant with no form. That's you sort of expect of anyone who tries to do lit fic from this board. So for the first few pages where he had like a couple pieces of poetry and some scatterbrained entries, I thought, okay, well, I'm probably gonna end this early and pretend I read it. But as the book goes on, it actually turns into like a pretty quality confessional novel. I think
it does. Yeah, I mean, going into this, what is probably best described as the harrowing tale of one man's descent into schizophrenia, complete with, the obligatory stalking, necrophilia, attempted murder, lemur furries. Yes, unfortunately they exist. And diarized rambles, I did not have high expectations either. Frankly, I thought, shit, is this going to be harassment architecture 2? The Gothic violence?
Right.
No. It picks up steam. And while it is everything I have just described, it's also very well executed, and with enough technical writing ability and knowing when to fucking shut up that actually makes this book a pleasure to read.
Yeah, like it never runs beyond the punchline. I always appreciate it's pretty succinct when it's trying to make a point or trying to end a scene. It doesn't sort of double dip or worse, run over its own punchline with some bit of ironic moralizing, I guess. I
That is true.
appreciate that. Yeah.
And on that note, one thing that I found was actually the opposite of the typical irony that everyone, including us, hide behind as an excuse not to actually invest in anything these days. Because I mean, it's the current year; investments are going to fail, and the world will end. But this book does not have that. It's written with a sincerity that's extremely rare nowadays, at least in the kind of fiction we talk about. And hell, it was rare even before Trump was elected in like 2016, and the only good gorilla died. But
Hmm.
relevantly, it's written with sincerity, and I would put good money on this. And I am a gambler girl, but I'll put good money on this that it was written with a hefty dose of personal experience. Not
Oh
so
yeah.
much.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean this oh boy, I trip myself. Yeah, but this is written with the authenticity that only a schizophrenic could muster. Like you, when you're having schizophrenic delusions, it's not like a little smarmy voice in your head going, "Government agents hiding in your walls." Isn't that a bit ridiculous? No, it's an honest, total delving into the spew that your brain is spitting out, and I love that. Honestly, I love like there's bits and pieces here that were so raw that I have to think this is actually based on a true story. Well, the non-murder bits.
I mean, hey, people kill people in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for all context here, in case you haven't read the book, and now, if we had less integrity, we'd say, put this down and read the book. But we know if you did that, you would not finish the rest of the podcast, so read the book afterward. Is the context is that it takes place over about 10 years, the book. About a third of it is like actual diarized journal entries, which, if done well, are actually kind of enjoyable to read. I don't know if any of you have heard of Spud by, whoever wrote Spud. South African novel, mid 2000s, detailed the guy's life at boarding school. It was sort of the South African wimpy kid. And due to the affiliation with our unfortunate country, went a lot harder than Diary of the Wimpy Kid. I mean, at one point, the guy was like sexually tortured. He was like 14, and this was a children's novel. It did not thrill me about the prospect of going to boarding school. One bit. But my point is that it has journal entries, and the trick with journal entries is, as we've said, one, authenticity, and two, knowing when to stop, not running over the punchline. And so, for example, my favorite one, which I am pulling up on the PDF of my, well, it's the PDF that I've saved on my phone, is Wednesday, July 30th, 2003. No matter how big or small, organizations are easy to infiltrate and vulnerable to sabotage. No group is immune. That includes co-spiring, co-joint twins. Chef's kiss. Short, simple,
Yeah.
and a lot of the first part of the book develops the plot through these little aphorisms. And it was interesting because, I mean, you already see the schizophrenia. Normal, happy people don't talk about infiltrating organizations. They don't talk about co-joint twins. And I like that as it,
Right.
foreshadows the absolute shitstorm, literal, that is to
That's
come.
coming. Yeah. Because the thing about a schizophrenic, and it's also just the thing about people who have like memory disorders, they will say a sentence with perfect structure, and they'll tell a story with perfect structure where everything is in its right place, except the content is completely nonsensical. Every single word is said in a cadence that resembles normalcy, but the words themselves are they completely do not belong in the places they're put in. And you can see that in the thought process of someone whose mental state is completely deteriorating. And you can see that in his journal entries as they become increasingly detached. Because you you're reading a piece of fiction, so obviously your suspension of disbelief is pretty strong. However, he'll present something like hacking his ex-girlfriend's social media accounts, all of them, which was very easy in 2008. And this isn't presented as something that's significant or as like a departure from a normal behavior, but this is just like the normal step you take after finding out that your ex is hiding from you.
And why is your ex hiding from you, might I ask? Because you sent her a torn up Muppet. Like, look, I'm not convinced about puppets either. I think they have unfortunate Gnostic implications. But what is relevant here is you fucking buy one, for starters, which is already, a deep blot on your character. You shred the little guy, and then you FedEx it to her across national borders. Yeah, from you
Right.
too. And then he hacks the account, and this is when he's lucid. The whole book is like, this is a fucking trip to read.
Absolutely.
And that brings me to the topic of the girlfriend, Ava. What I think is a very interesting take on the character because we don't ever really see her. We have about one piece of dialogue with her in the entire story, and that's online. It means the main character of this book doesn't really appear in the book itself. And so I was very impressed with MNDR's attempt to bring this character to life, and how also from a different angle, harrowingly personal the character is. Yeah, this is what I'm saying is, I don't know if you know this, but like I grew up with family members who suffered from what is in, I think, outdated parlance called manic depression, and Ava hits that like a T. It's think of what little dialogue there is in this book. This is sadly not mentioned, but it's a very interesting depiction of the mental illness and the constant up and down attempt to channel manic energy into productivity, which never fucking works. And then the depression of you realizing it never fucking works and trying to either wallow in your own guilt to dig yourself out. And to see Ava's own growth over the 10 years is also very interesting because both the characters in this book, Ava and our guy, who is unnamed, so we call him the protagonist, they're in the media industry, film, like propaganda. Canadian too, which is shit. And so to see her basically fail to achieve her dreams of becoming like a screenwriter, actress, director combination, and slide further and further into the trap that is self-help, running back to her parents, getting more and more desperate and questionably mentally stable, all the while being employed in this hacking, faking your own death conspiracy. It's a very nice foil to the protagonist's own descent into madness. And it's a very different kind of madness that isn't often discussed. I mean, I see why. It's fucking depressing. It's in the name, manic depression. But it is a pleasure to read how well and accurately it's done. It's pitiful to the point of pathetic, which, it is in real life in many scenarios.
The narrator is, while he's sort of now describing mockingly Ava's total descent into being a pathetic mid-30s failure, I mean, it was something that was, again, it's one of those aspects of the book that makes me think there's a good deal of real lived experience here, because there is something described here that seems like you've seen it happen before. It's, I mean, even beyond her manic depression, that sort of life cycle is so common for people who are not pushed hard down a specific path, who allow themselves to become generalists and just sort of meander thing to thing while having passions or desires that don't have clear directions, that there's no clear path towards achieving that.
Yeah.
So it's depressing what became of her, but also
it's like, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Trust fund's gonna run out eventually.
Yeah, it's funny how much contempt the narrator has for Riot.
Granted, Ava is also a furry. That is a meaningful aspect of her character, is that she is a lemur furry. Which, personally I thought didn't fucking exist, because the problem with non-human primates, one of many, I've ranted about this before and will do so again, is you can't anthropomorphize a monkey. You just get another monkey. It's like, okay, you take a fucking vervet monkey, you make it more anthropomorphic, okay, good job, you have a chimp. You don't get monkey furries. It's contradictory.
True.
And so when Eva is like, her passwords to everything is Lima13 and she self-identifies as the Lima girl, it's on the one hand out of left field, but it's also exactly what you'd expect a mid-20s white woman to do when she has no real career prospect. And that brings me to the next point which I found in this that really makes me think it's lived experience. I mean, firstly, the hacking, which is done quite accurately. I personally was thankful enough never to make a MySpace account. I just listened to Evanescence in the comfort of my own bedroom and did not speak about it online. But that was done very well. And another thing that makes you think, okay, this dude has actually got his hands dirty is the weed. Not necessarily the smoking of it, which, granted, I have done, nearly killed myself doing a couple of times. Weed and tennis referee chairs do not mix, let me tell you. But how it is grown.
I mean, I don't listen. I am not a drug enthusiast. Oh well, for the purposes of for legal purposes, I'm not a drug enthusiast. I've never grown any weed in my life, so I don't know anything about the authenticity of his depiction of weed and hydroponics. That might be someone else's wheelhouse.
Yeah, okay, weed is legal where I am, so, I am at liberty to talk about length about this, and let me tell you, the painstaking process of growing those little bastards is well done here. And what is truly hilarious to me is, okay, one, nobody wants to read a series of journal entries about how much water he puts in the weed. That's not fascinating. That's a textbook. What is hilarious, however, is the ongoing mental decay he is experiencing while trying to grow weed, because he is living with a man, Darren, I believe, a skydiving instructor and scat fetishist. And just watching the personalities play off, because Darren's a horrible failure of a human being. A running theme throughout this book is that either they are pretty much losers. And so Darren's there, as middle-aged guys do, soaking in the impact of a divorce, walking around in his underwear, pursuing new career opportunities, getting into weird kinds of porn in public places. And we have the protagonist just there trying to grow weed in his basement. The juxtaposition of this madness, brilliant, thoroughly enjoyable. And so you have journal entries where the guy's like saying, water in the weed today. Certain percentage humidity, the blight's going away. I caught Darren watching chest-chilling videos in the living room again. Cracked me up. And another thing, with this, they really hit you on the head with a hammer, was the process he goes through in doing this. And the ants. Because like a running sub-point in this book is the guy's just shite like this. Starting with the cat he kills, mostly for shits and giggles. Just up and murders the thing. And then he goes with the ants. Because Darren's house, because logical reasons, has an ant infestation, which are like the bane of his existence when he's trying to grow the weed. And just seeing this guy bang his head and what little brains slowly rotting away he has in it, pretty good against the ants, which he eventually overcomes, sells the weed, and then doesn't even smoke any of it. And what he does at the end of the house. Dude, do you remember that? What I'm saying with this is, what happens afterwards, after he's sold the weed for a profit that's mostly con manning. It's revealed the true extent of his madness. Because up until this point, the dude's fucked up, but he's no more fucked up than your average 4chan user. I'm sure we've all, tortured small animals in our spare time. But filling separate vats of piss and shit to smear around a man's house is something personally I have not yet done. And don't plan on doing. Namely, as I don't own any vats, and I don't live in a house. That the point is that just the sheer meticulousness of the revenge and the seeming coherence with he does it, that's another schizophrenia thing, and that sheer concentrated spite. To write that, you have to be a Nobel Prize winner, back when Nobel Prize meant something. And to sort of see that, it kicks off the descent into madness, the true descent into madness, not like the pussy-ass stuff we've been talking about so far. Impressive.
So the story feels a little confused, only because the first, I guess, 10 pages feel like preamble, as in the author is trying to work himself into a narrative or a story or a sort of coherent story. Because the first, 10 pages are stitched together schizo rambles, and not in a cool way, just sort of nonsensical things. And also there's the American Psycho, Patrick Bateman, random murders of the I don't want to call them the underclass, but grisly murders of people who wouldn't be noticed if they were killed. But both of those things sort of disappear like 30 pages in. Like they're not even really revived. I don't think he kills another person until part 2 of the book, after the illustrations, where he's completely detached from reality and he's hallucinating people as being talking vegetables, I think.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing, because the book wears its influence on his sleeve. One of which is American Psycho, which, if you're on the, you too are influenced by Bret Easton Ellis, and Bret Easton Ellis probably gets off to that. And so yeah, we see in the start of this book, the guy, he buys a claw hammer and he bangs in some homeless lady's skull with it. This does not kill her. He chases her around a while, but eventually, things are dark, you get bored, you go home. And then he sees her later on in the subway. And all he has to do is simply cock his hand and tap the back of his head. But yeah, these themes of violence aren't really revisited. Violence certainly is a major theme of the book, but consummating violence in this relatively lucid way is not. And yeah, it's also not, one of the few complaints of the book is that it's not dropped with, enough precision to make it think, okay, now we're getting more serious. Now it's just the dude left the warm-up pages in the book.
Yeah, basically. You can tell the entire narrative, even though it's following his descent into madness, and we'll talk into beyond the schizophrenia, he's got a very interesting depiction of a somatoform disorder. But beyond that, the book is very steady. It's got clear and linearly progressing parts. With Darren, there's the hacking of Ava. There's his attempt to woo the Jewish lady towards the back middle of the book. There's also his little drama with the filmmakers that he's had a falling out with. But it all progresses pretty linearly. So getting to that part after spending 30 pages of harebrained nonsense seems like a departure that isn't, as you said, precise. It just seems like, oh, now I understand what this book is going to be, but I don't want to waste 20 pages.
Precisely, yeah. And one thing I noticed, looping back to the episode The Jewish Lady, which I think is personal experience, because shocker, Jews exist in real life. The first part of it is done via email correspondence, which is a big mystery because we only see our guys' emails. The hers are entirely blacked out. It's almost a bit of a jump in the book because he's surprisingly suave when he wants to be. And then he successfully seduces a housewife via email, which is it's not impossible, but then again, you have to try. I mean, panties don't just drop. There has to be some kind of effort put in here. And he does, which is remarkable. And then another theme of the book is the dude's continual sexual disappointment. I don't know if that's real life, but then again, I'm not the expert in Jewish hips and pancake tits, so I have neither.
Nah, he quietly rages against the existence of shapewear twice in the book. Two separate instances of him, I guess, working himself up, wheedling down the defenses of his romantic interests, and then getting them in bed and being just sorely disappointed at what they look like outside of clothes. And I found that was fucking hilarious. It's one of those observations you really don't get in other pieces of fiction. It's why it's one of the things that makes this an actual novel work.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, obviously shapewear exists. If you're the kind of person who reads white girl novels, I think it is mentioned occasionally, but I've checked the channel demographics. Nobody here, except maybe me, reads white girl novels. So yeah, just this juxtaposition, because this comes when, things are looking out for the guy. The string of emails thinking, okay, cool, he's got his life together, he's a respectable human being again. And Mary's box hips just hit him like a fucking hammer, just out of nowhere. This girl is not a good lay.
To be fair to Mary, you cannot hide box hips and shapewear. He should have known. That's something that pops out outside of clothing, in the clothing. It's very obvious.
Would you say that this is a specifically Jewish thing? As that's the impression I got from reading the text.
Yes, box hips. You can, so the Jew chest, check the nose, check the hair color, check the hair consistency. If those are leaving you a little miffed, a little confused, check the hips. They cannot escape the box hips. It is endemic to their entire population.
Box hips. Are we seriously doing fucking phrenology?
Yes, dude. Listen. Phrenology has a lot of good uses. You just have to know where to use it. You don't want to be fooled by a crafty, auburn-haired, small-nosed individual with a last name like McDonald. All right? And then you get home and their parents are like, oh, God, they look like fucking Larry David. And you realize you've been trapped. You have to be vigilant.
Check the hips.
Check the hips.
And the way I discern Semitism is through the hips. Is this what those history textbooks are not telling me?
Yes.
There's not, a Holocaust based on calipers. This was a Holocaust based on waist size.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you notice all those pictures, they never depict them below the waist. It's always head up, so you see the hair and nose, and like, this is what a Jew looks like. They're tricking you, obviously. It's a little bit of misdirection.
I mean, on the one hand, I'm thinking about this and I'm like racking my brain for interactions with non-Shiksas right now. And I'm like, I'm dramatically concerned he may be onto something.
All I'm saying is look into it.
I mean, I guess, well, I need an excuse to watch Wonder Woman. Here we go.
She has them, by the way. Just so you know. Gal Gadot. But we have gone probably too long on box tips. That's its own episode. Jewish
Yeah.
phrenology is its own 6-hour episode.
So, okay, going back to Miri, she reappears later on with her husband, who presumably also has box tips. And two things stick out to me, because this is when either the protagonist or the author himself is implied to have played Fallout. Or, seen Mad Max,
Right.
or something in the genre. He's like
Right.
obsessing about, the Day of Reckoning. Not, Elliot Rodgers style Day of Reckoning where he begins it, but that it will begin by Elliot Rodgers style individuals, and he is going to be a badass wasteland survivor.
Oh yeah, the revival of that.
Yes, and he fantasizes extensively about Miri's two daughters. Not sexually. The guy is kind of fucked up, but Kani is not one of his vices. No, he is fucked up because he daughter foos them. Like, they are his ideal kids. And he goes on at length about, no, young white girls, that's an untapped market. When the Day of Reckoning comes, that'll be worth more than a full tank of petrol. I think on the one hand, that is entirely true.
Of course.
On the other hand, what the fuck?
I mean, I'm sure the prostitution industry has survived literally every single societal collapse that has ever transpired.
Sometimes it even births new industries.
Uh-huh. A society built on prostitution would probably never go broke. We should also look into that.
Yes, we should. This isn't implying that the nuclear bombs caused anime. But on the other hand, you drop the little boy one and the fat man nuclear bomb on Japan, the centers of Catholic Christianity in the Far East, mind you, and you see this. I mean, the bombs were literally called Shota and Fat Bastard. What do you expect to happen? But relevantly to the book we are discussing. So we have Ava, and then we have Miri, and there's a third love interest towards the end, just before, the doodles, which I'll get to as they're quite something. The dude decides he is going to go on the schizo rampage. He loads his cult. Why the guy just doesn't pay half price and get a hardballer, I don't know. But he gets his cult, he gets like 700 rounds, and he gets really stoked, and he drives over, and he takes a train, and this is like after a solid decade of being kind of fucked up in the last 4 years he's spent hiding in his parents' attic. Decides he's, finally going to go and track down the secretly influenced people that have been making his life a mess and have assassinated his wife. Slash fiance, she was French-Canadian anyway. And then he meets this chick in a wheelchair, Jacinta. And on the one hand, I appreciate disability representation. Now, I'm not, the kind of nut job to get a buzz cut and scream about how, XYZ demographic is underrepresented. But, I think, you don't choose to be disabled, for starters.
What are you talking about, dude? There are like 6 French Canadians in this book.
Look, being Quebecois is not a disability. It's many things, but I swear, for you do not face legal discrimination from being from French Canada.
That's a shame.
From personal experience, maybe a jackass, yes, but, if you're from Montreal, you know. But I'm ranting about something else right now. Disability representation, I appreciate it, and I think it's relevant because, unlike with most kinds of representation when done shittily, which they typically are, disability representation immediately, opens it up to new character angles and questions, like how does this person navigate life? And furthermore, how do they navigate social attractions? It's kind of weird to look down on somebody all the time if they got chaired, or, somebody's blind, or what have you. And so that was interesting to see. And what's hilarious is the return of the shapewear occurs here. Because the culmination of this guy's first, rampage is that he runs into his this chick who more or less seduces him on account of being a very good-looking 30 and actually having a career and finding his derangement charming. He later decides, he's going to molest her in the middle of the street, kill her, finally, commit necrophilia, and does so. Why she's not wearing underwear is not brought up, but, clearly she was aiming for something else that night, too. And her ass is flat. It's like flatter than the earth. And the sight of it so much traumatizes the guy that he immediately just fucks off. I know, man. But back to the idea of French Canada. What do you have to say about that, apart from the fact that they should be facing legal discrimination?
No, I mean, I thought it was cool to have a little peek. When he was talking about being a screenwriter and his friends jipping him out of some profits for a movie idea, I obviously assumed it was the character was some failed, I guess, Hollywood writer. I wasn't expecting him to be part of some niche indie Montreal film scene. Scene. So seeing the big sum of money he was mad about losing, it was like the equivalent was 180,000 was the gross of that film on the budget.
Yeah. That's not much.
It's cool to see. The most interesting part of this book, though, was him trying to find out why his body was slowly shutting down piece by piece. Because
yes.
that was 100% certain. It's just him actually writing diary entries. Because that is like the classic description of a somatoform disorder where your brain is like made of retard juice and it keeps making your body sick even though you have nothing wrong with you. It's just you're completely unable to process stress at all in a healthy way. So your body starts doing weird shit, which is what his was doing. And so he's like begging someone to find like a brain tumor, and eventually he just settles on he's got like a shoulder impingement, whatever. And like, oh, this is what's wrong with me. So as soon as I get this fixed, I'm gonna be better. And it clearly worked because by the end of the book, he is killing mushroom people like Mario. So
yeah, clearly it worked. And speaking of killing people, like the first and really closest he gets after the first part in which he disputedly sets somebody on fire, which it tends to kill people. And bludgeon somebody, which tends to kill people long term, especially if you don't have medical aid, and mutilates a cat because, just looking at him funny. And look, dude, cats are on the list. After the revolution comes and we put all the monkeys against the wall, few choice felines I wouldn't mind deleting, is Charlotte. Charlotte is his fiancée, basically, and he meets her like mid-rampage. He's walking around, looking for something to kill, and then he stresses molest. Wrapping his dick in cling film so he doesn't get, prion AIDS. Which is intelligent, but that's also why condoms were invented. And so, yeah, mid-rampage, he runs into Charlotte, who is best described as big titty goth GF, but also mommy GF at, the same time. It's like his personal, Resident Evil Village Lady Dimitrescu. It's that for him. He's totally stoked because, he thought people like Amy Lee didn't exist in real life, but apparently they do, and they've aged well. And so he goes to her house, with cats, and enjoyed it because it was like good hit romance, which is rare. And, okay, that's not to say queer romance is any better or any more common. It's mostly shit too. But we have good comfy romance, things are going well, the dude's somehow adjusting to life in French Canada, capital too, Montreal, and he's chilling there and suddenly Charlotte disappears and the dude chimps out. And only later is it revealed that, she was beaten up by some dude at her, spin class. Camp gay, it stresses. And she's limped home, mangled, beaten, bloodied. And after, she has a bath, our guy, the protagonist, decides, you know what? Now begins the rampage. So he grabs his Colt. No clear explanation of how he got it into Canada, apart from, and I quote, Canadian border security is like the TSA, except twice as strict and 5 times as retarded. So he takes his Colt, stroking himself the whole time, edging the entire adventure. Sneaks into the guy's house, and he's crouching behind the door, waiting for his fiancée to go to sleep so he can burst in and cap him in the head and then fuck the hole. And then the dude stands up too quickly and passes out from the blood rush. And when he gets back to the crib, Charlotte is gone. All evidence of Charlotte is scraped. It's like she was never there. The house is emptied of her stuff, her cats, her, middle-aged women possessions, her band stuff, all of it's just gone. And this is like a major mystery of the book. This is never, followed up on. But it's clear, at least by the text, to have actually happened, not to be a, delusion. So
Yeah.
wandering around pointlessly, he then leaves Montreal because, his fiancée has been scraped from the face of the earth and reappears like 2 months later. No explanation.
Yeah, I mean, what sort of threat are you seeing? Beyond the horrors of tight clothing, what threads are you seeing throughout his the book's relationship, throughout all of his relationship in the book?
Well, what I think about a lot of it is the guy's failure to actually get to know people and connect humanly. I'd say that's a big one. That is implied by, why Ava fakes her own death, Charlotte gets scraped, his relationship with Mary disintegrates, and, the one with Jacinta never gets anywhere is because the guy never actually connects with her on a personal level because of like his mental illness. He's isolated, and while he can, as evidenced by the emails and some of his interactions with Charlotte, be charismatic. Sure, he never makes a significant emotional connection throughout the book that is reciprocated.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the most intimate we get with any character is not the well. We get a little intimate with how when he's really breaking schizophrenic. It's with Ava, and we get very intimate. And within the book, she has no knowledge of how intimate this relationship gets. And within and outside of it, as readers, we don't get any acknowledgement from Ava about how deep inside her soul, uh, protagonist has been.
Yeah, definitely, because it's all
Complete
one-sided
one-way.
because it's stalking.
Yep. One-way intimacy.
Yeah, and it's like implied when she finally does find out at least the tip of the iceberg, she blue screens. She deletes everything she has and fakes her own death to get rid of the guy, which works temporarily until he, does the logical thing and just calls her parents. So I'd say that's a theme. And I'd say violence is also a theme, but what I found interesting is the absence of an interplay of sex and violence in this novel. And this is one of my major theories. Right up there with, chimps are demonic and people on the left-wing side of the political spectrum irrationally hate beauty, but that there is no actual genuine interplay between sex and violence. Real violence is not erotic. People trying to, stab you to death, you don't get off to that. It does not make you wet. People trying to stab you to death is fucking terrifying. And trying to stab people to death, you're too busy doing that to, stick your hands down your pants. And vice versa, if you're in a genuinely intimate and loving relationship, which presumably no one here has been, including myself, but so I'm like, this is secondhand knowledge, granted, but you don't feel a need to, whip your partner with a belt. That one's personal experience. Because you actually genuinely care for them and you want to have them be happy. So that this idea of, sex and violence, it's the same thing, fuck off. It's not. And you see that in the book, because the guy is horny and he's violent, yes. But they're never the same thing. He's not, like, aroused by the idea of violence so much as he's aroused by, like, the idea of desecrating things. Like, violence is a means to an end to fuck things up. That's what he gets off to. And I found that as another theme of the book, that this very clear divide between, violence for violence's sake and sex for sex's sake. And that the two are always, like, very clearly divided, even when he's trying and failing to do both.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I buy the clean separation between the two, but I will say one thing that distinguished this clearly from from Harassment Architecture, which, by the way, completely stole this book's clout. I was shocked reading this how obviously in the same vein it was, beyond the obvious diary entry and hyper-violence depiction, but also the attitude of the protagonist as this warrior for justice, this beta uprising thing. It's very much the same vein. But anyway, one clean departure is that so the depiction of the narrator for Harassment Architecture, his rage is often intermingled with horniness, and it may not be explicitly textual, but if the subtext of it is clear, like horny rage. This is not really the overarching theme here. He's horny, and he's angry. But as you said, the two rarely do the two meet.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a decent assessment of it. And another theme, that stuck out to me in this book was dealing with failure, or in his case and Ava's case, and arguably even in Charlotte's case, he's like on the one hand a successful creative person who actually does jack of all trades things, but on the other hand is 50 and unmarried, so like draw your own conclusions. Is dealing with failure is like the idea of, okay, I'm trying to create something, I'm trying to influence the world, I'm trying to entertain and spread a message, and nobody's picking up. As somebody who's self-pubbed largely because she could not trad pub, actually seeing this is, it hits home, and it's another reason why I think, this book was self-published too. You see this idea of failure in pretty much all the main characters. You see it with Darren, the skydiving divorcee. You obviously see it with Ava, who buys books with titles like Autism for Girls when she's 38. And the whole protagonist thing is this idea of, well, he fucks up being a media guy. He doesn't get his script written. He's schneid out of the money, he's cheated out of the money, and he ends up moving back in with his parents, all the while dealing with psychosomatic pain and absolute lunacy.
Honestly, Ava is like 50 bitches, which is also why I found it hard to be like, oh, this is a specific and tragic depiction. Nah, this sort of career failure due to not being particularly driven in terms of your personality, followed by the desperate need to clamber to some identity, no matter how scant or nonsensical, like autism as a 30-something-year-old adult, and the mantras, the self-help books. Probably listens to audio tapes since 2009. The podcast hadn't been universal yet. Probably listens to self-affirmation audio tapes. This is just like a standard person. There are like 50 million of this individual right now in this country. This is one of those things that does not seem all that like born from real life. If you've watched Mr. Robot, this Ava's character is identical to the, I forget her name, the lead blonde from that show.
Yeah.
It's not identical, but quite similar. It's a typical character, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say that. I'd still like to make the argument that, the description of like depression in Ava's character is somewhat realistic, just like the intense reliance on shitty coping mechanisms, especially like pseudo-spiritual coping mechanisms. I've seen a couple of people personally go through that, but, on the other hand, fair enough. These people are not rare. You've probably dated one of them. And another, theme I found with this is, this idea of creativity, which brings me to the doodles. It's rare to find a novel geared to adults that is meaningfully illustrated. It is another thing to find one that crams all the illustrations into 50 pages right in the fucking middle of the book. Yeah. And the illustrations are somewhat good.
Yeah, like dude, like the illustration, the 100 or so pages of illustration was like the moment where I was like, okay, this book is a shit. This is like an actual quality fucking novel. There's so much effort put into this. Ignoring the 30 pages of preamble that he left in, there's so much effort put in this that I am shocked and a little depressed at how it hasn't really penetrated even lit. And we're not saying slash lit anymore because someone commented that it's slash lit slash. So instead of half-assing it, and because slash lit slash sounds ridiculous, it's just lit now.
Yeah, the illustrations are done, and they're also fairly varied and have enough character to show that the guy actually has a decent artistic knowledge. I wouldn't say it's naive art, as that is something I have studied, because despite being a high school dropout, I actually occasionally put an F in high school. But they're well done, and they actually put together the sense that the guy could make the coloring book he describes in Story Making, an adult coloring book.
Right.
These little dudes. And the fact is, there's so many little dudes here, and, they have personality, they have effort. You feel like, okay, they have stories. Good display of artistic principles here. Very presentable line drawing. It's an effort post that you wouldn't find, in a grift. Because in a grift, you just wouldn't illustrate the damn thing.
And this is part of his supposed last gambit, which is writing a children's book. And I don't think this one. I don't think this one works out because in part 2 he is fully fully arrested by his schizophrenic delusions. Seems to be at rock bottom.
Yep. Strangely enough, the first time I read this book, I did not actually see that part. Because the copy I pirated, because, it's a good book, but I don't pay money even for quality unless we're talking food or things I can't steal. Yeah, I pirated it, and I somehow got the 200-page version without the last third of the book. So in the original version, when Davis was telling me, dude, there's this whole schizo breakdown, I was thinking, yeah, man, it came before the doodles, and it ended when the guy meets Jacinta. No, there's another one. And
Yep.
look, guy on Z Library who posted this, if you're watching this, thanks. You distracted me. I hope you're, happy here.
Yeah, the first discussion episode was also incomplete because of that little mix-up, which I did not experience that mix-up. I did pirate it still, though. Probably have to buy the copy at this point, just to settle your spirit. So the second part is actually what reminded me the most of harassment architecture, because that one was less diary entries and more like, I guess, essays.
Yeah.
Uh, that you saw in harassment architecture.
Yeah, and now I can't prove this for certain, but noted non-Asian Mike Ma, I think definitely read this book, probably multiple times.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And we were saying the official stance of Unreal Press and Unreal affiliates is this one's better. Not only because it's an
Absolutely.
actual effort post that takes itself authentically in the 21st century internet, but because it has clear pacing and it isn't afraid to actually put its heart and soul into it. Mike Myers never shot a policeman. This guy though, this guy has definitely beaten up homeless people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Especially the time this takes place in, which is early to mid 2000s. This dude was definitely like someone paying bums to fight and filming it. But also, remind me, didn't harassment architecture have like a glut of illustrated pages?
It had some, yes. Curiously, in the middle of the book.
Word for word, bar for bar, whole fucking flow. I think MMDNR has like a legal claim. He is in the States. You can sue people for anything.
Yeah, I mean, you could just commit violence. That's a viable option.
Yeah, that's much cooler, yes. If I had to choose, and we do not condone or promote violence on this podcast, but you should definitely, hypothetically, split Mike Moss skull open.
I mean, I do actually condone violence, granted under certain religious justifications. But I mean, there are more important people to kill in the world than Mike Ma. Also,
All right, well, go for a twofer.
you know who they are.
Oh yeah, they well, you can tell who they are.
I think we might have gone too far in some places, dude.
A little bit.
Yeah, that brings me, Ryan. Do you remember what MNMDR actually standard for? Because I swear it stood for something.
Oh, you did? Because I never figured it out, and I want to talk about that guy whenever after this, after you make this point.
Yeah, I swear it stood for something like Mega Necro Mega Destructor Rape Face. Because that's like the one
Oh,
all caps thing he makes that actually matches that.
I think I may have heard of that even before I read this, like
Yeah.
years ago on the board.
Yeah, Master Necro Mega Destructive Rape Face. That's what it stands for.
Okay.
But you were saying?
Yeah, no, this motherfucker. And by the way, just for clarity's sake, we were always going to talk about Behead All Satans because it is like the OG. Besides Totalitarianism in the Tundra, this is the OG lit book.
Yeah,
But
this
this dude
is
has been
type
on
4.
every single social media platform we are on saying it's time to talk about Behead All Satans. And I don't just mean Twitter, which he has been on. He's been in the Discord. And he was on our WordPress site, the site that I'm so diligent about that I did not see this comment until a month later. He was on the WordPress site on every single post commenting, it's time to talk about Behead All Satans under like a sock puppet account. It was very elaborate.
The John Wick of filling books nobody has heard of.
Like, it's either the author or like I mean, to call him a fan would be beyond it. This is a 7-year-old book that very few people have read. It
Yeah.
has to be the author.
Yeah, I mean, it's like people are fans of pro wrestling. People are fans of Skillet. People are fans of My Little Pony. People are not fans of Behead All Satans. You do not make the Behead Lemur your profile pic unless you have one goal in life. So yeah, man, that was pretty surreal. It was like, oh shit, real life is intruded on this. Because, I'm not going to lie here, I did not actually expect this podcast to be, as successful as it did. Success in
Yeah,
massive air quotes, currently.
you're right.
Yeah, if you're
But
watching this
seriously,
from the
who the
future, where we're more popular than, Caribbean Rhythms and Joe Rogan, then, yeah, duh, but,
yeah, who the fuck are you people, man? Where have you come from? Like, I expect this to get like I'm talking 15% views from the like our friend group. Like I was
yeah.
expecting like 7 to 10 views, and then pretending not to be insulted when people tell me, "Oh yeah, okay, I'm not gonna waste time on your 7 view podcast." But like, where are these people coming from?
Yeah, it's like I've changed I made it the shtick I used to make myself seem like hot shit and cheap bars is, I'm LAbuschagne. I'm not just a writer, a notable student leader, and a faculty researcher, all of which are exaggerations. I am, in fact, a podcaster. I have over
Hmm.
1,000 views. Granted, this is South Africa where owning a diesel generator will get people to suck your dick, but like, who are you guys? And also, relevantly, if you've watched to this point, what do you want us to talk about? Because, I mean, I have plans of shit to talk about, but if we can, preach the choir here, we will do it. I study preaching. Yeah. So, I mean, now, apart from our sudden influence and popularity, which I hope is not due to secretly influenced people, the SIP is a large theme of this book. Not to be confused with SCP, which is from a different, socially unacceptable corner of the internet, justifiably even. They're like the redditors of, SIPs are secretly influenced people. Because the guy being schizophrenic, autism is when you see everything separate. Schizophrenia is when it is all connected. Most of the people he despises in his life are secretly influenced by who we're not sure. But you know them when you see them. You can tell by the, and you can also tell because they're the guys single-handedly responsible for ruining this guy's life and possibly yours. And it's like everyone from the Australian. He almost fucks until the guy realizes, oh shit, she's Australian. And Charlotte and Ava's parents and his parents and Darren, the skydiving instructor, most of those people, Pulla, as we say in Afrikaans. And it's sort of building towards this grand conspiracy. But the hilarious thing is that nothing ever comes of it because despite being gang stalked, which actually happens in real life, even if you're a psychopath and not a schizophrenic, to which he gives the very good advice of respond with violence, which actually works in real life. But the problem is you have to be prepared to commit violence, is that it creates this idea of he's really trying to put the blame on other people for his personal failings, or at least that's the way I saw it. Now, what did you think about that, man?
Definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, he is clamoring for a reason beyond him, not just for his failing, but to do anything. Like at the beginning of the book, you can tell he's sort of been ripped out and still recuperating from being screwed on the film, whatever happened there. But yeah, but being screwed there, and he's just looking for, I guess, anything. Like he's motivated by such effervescent things, and then he's always disappointed, even when he's not like taking off shapewear. He's always disappointed by the outcomes of his books, of his actions. But I will say, if you're someone listening to this podcast and you're having what you think could be schizophrenic delusions or hallucinations, I'm just gonna say, as a digital friend, that you can't tell if someone's a lizard person unless you take off their skin.
As an internet friend who will probably do this thing you do in clubs where you say, okay, you buy the next round, and then I'll buy the next round, and then I fuck off before we have the next round. Two pieces of advice. One, do whatever the opposite of what your brain is telling you. It worked for me. Granted, my struggles were more Chinevio than actual delusions. But, like, whenever you think something, just do the opposite. Even if it fails, it's very entertaining. It sets out a new plan for the week. And second, in order to peel somebody's skin off, I have to confront them. You can't simply fantasize about wrapping your genitalia in cling film and molesting them. No, you actually have to molest them. Like, you don't even have to molest them to pull their skin off. It's like, I don't know about you, but last time I tried to actually cut somebody again, it wasn't really doing the trick for me. It was just, well, okay. I mean, he's a human under the Gucci shirt. That much I know. A dickhead. Racist even. And not that kind of funny internet racist people are on 4chan. Like actual attempting violence because somebody was from Zimbabwe. So yeah. I mean, I guess that's all I have to say about, delusionism, behead all Satans, and yeah, how to practically behead Satans. What do you have to say, Ryan?
That is the closing message of the book, Behead All Satans. And wait, no. Was that the opening to part 2 or the end of part 2?
It's
I
a
can't even remember.
motif.
But yeah, Behead All Satans in all caps.
Yeah.
No, it was a tight book, some tight shit. Read it seriously. If you're in the business of reading 4chan source books, like it's a fucking farm raised salmon. 4chan written books. You have to read this. It's the best of the bunch that I've read.
It's like Call of the
so
Crocodile is ironically good. Harassment Architecture is ironically fun. Shaman, Sociopath, and The Shah of Trubay are like good, but yeah, you have to be in the right mindset for it. This one, it's just like objectively, this is actual literature. Read it. Hell, pay money for it. I know, like, one of us might.
Definitely pay money for it. Yeah, I mean, respect to MNMDR. I know he's listening to this podcast. I'm gonna buy your book. I apologize for admitting to piracy. Do not call the Pope on me.
I mean, I know a guy who knows the Pope.
Actually, do call the Pope on me. I want to fuck that guy up.
Look, dude, if we have Francis on here, I'm not fucking him up. I wanna get his opinion on so much stuff.
Yeah, what's it like to commune daily with Satan? I'd love to ask him that.
Hey man, I'm like unironically Catholic here.
Oh, you're not like one of the other 6 Catholics we know that's their set of Anticus?
No, I'm like actual Novus Ordo, dude. I'm like Pope Francis episode with Bone. If we get likes, we might do it. Yeah, I'm not saying a number. I'm just setting the existence.
Right. Speaking of future episode ideas, so on the YouTube channel we are approaching 100, and I want to do something special, even if it's not necessarily podcast specific, for that episode. So you can hit us up on Twitter or in the YouTube comment section or on Discord and throw your ideas at us. As long as the requests are peppered with little racial slurs, we always love that.
Yes, and like be creative. We've had enough of people, hard R'ing each other. Like, come on here, give me something for an ethnicity you don't see every day.
That was something that my grandpa would say.
Do something that my grandpa would say. Like he was actually in the apartheid regime government, so he knew words.
Oh, fantastic.
My other grandfather was a freedom fighter, so it balances out. Don't worry. So, I mean, yeah, like, actually give us recommendations. I won't do a face reveal, but I might do a foot reveal.
I will not.
Right. So, without further ado, I mean, thanks for coming on, man. I can do these without you, but I mean, I don't know how to edit videos, so yeah.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, so I'm Rhyme. I'm Manson Rhyme on Twitter. I don't post there, but the follower count swelling up, swells my little ego. So
yeah,
shout out to me.
Yeah, I'm LAbuschagne. If we get 100 likes, I'll tell you what LA stands for, because it does not sound for Los Angeles. And, as always, I have been myself. I have been joined by copious amounts of alcohol and or nicotine because, as a Novus Ordo Catholic, I'm sort of forbidden from doing the other stuff. And yeah, we'll see you next episode. Until then, remember, behead all Satans.
I may have gone too far in a few places.